No, you should. That was not
sneaky at all. That was not sneaky at all.
All right, welcome to Something Like Sober. This is episode.
I believe it's episode number 8, but
we're going with 8. We're going with 8, and if not, we'll just change the episodes around to make it 8 because it's is what it is. We got a really cool guest today. Yeah, we're excited. You know, I don't even know what she's like. I'm so big on wanting to get females involved in this, just for perspective. Also to like. I think one thing that we noticed too was by having Kat in, it was like we're more similar than you think. I have a problem where of course I try to pick out the differences first, and like not just as like a female male thing, but just like in recovery and how our lives look and all that, like in general.
Right.
So I think it's cool to have the perspective to notice that we are all very similar, but we are different too. Yeah. And so Danielle, we're excited to have you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thanks, man. I'm stoked to be here. I have no idea what you guys want me to talk about, but
that's what the best part of it.
A lot to say.
Yeah, that's the best part because we don't know either.
Yeah,
we do zero legwork. Yeah, for this. It's like, hey, and I like the fact that like we know each other, but on a different, never met you before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we carry a lot of the same vibe, and like we grew up in the same era, so like we vibed to a lot of the same old school music.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
You know when you're cut from the same cloth. You know what I mean? Like that's how I felt about Jay whenever we met on Instagram. Yeah. I was like, he's posting all the good vibe music, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, that's when Jay called me the other day, and he was like, "All right, I found out who we're doing for the show," and I was like, "Who?" And he's like, "Danielle," and I was like, "Okay, great. Who's Danielle?" And he's like, "I don't know. I've never met her." And I was just like, "Well, shit, man, let's do it. Let's run it. What the hell?
Yeah,
well,
it's gonna be fun."
It's funny how the community works too, because everybody kind of you can ask someone, "Hey, do you know who this is?" And of course, like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." With and so I've talked to several people who not like I was digging into you. I was like, "Oh, you know," they're like, "Who's coming on next?" And I told them like, "Oh my gosh, like that's so cool, that's so awesome." So yeah, we're glad to have you. And again, like we don't really know where we go with this. We just start chatting, and then Drew starts asking cool questions. I
love it.
And Danielle, this is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
And so let's kind of get a little bit of a background, with you, and what did you fall into? What's your DOC? What's recovery looked like for you, and we'll kind of just let it spawn.
First of all, before you do that, how do you like Drew's shirt? This was a big deal coming over because Drew is okay. So here's the thing. Like, we want to talk about this too. Like the thing that makes us work and we're great friends. We're really different. You know what I mean? Like he thinks I look like a homeless person half the time with the way I dress. And then I think he looks like he came out of the Woodlands in Houston, prep school.
I love it.
You know what I mean? So like,
bunny.
I do though. This is one of the first time that Drew came on today with the shirt, and I was like, I would wear that shirt.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
I like the shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like the shirt. It looks
Yeah.
comfy. It looks breezy.
Yeah.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. She hit the vibe.
I walked out this morning, and one of our roommates looked at me. He goes, "You look like a gay cowboy," and I was just like, "Fuck, man, messed with my head before a podcast, but whatever."
Yep.
Then I had to wear it because I was like, "Well, I'm not going to take it off on account of him." So
there you go. There you go. Walk through the fear of uncomfortability.
That's true.
Do you normally wear a golf shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yo, he does. That's,
all right.
Every time.
I knew it.
Right
yeah.
on. Right
There's
on.
nothing wrong with that.
No. It's
yeah.
He owns it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is like he does it and he owns it. It's like the part of the hair and like and the watch and the loafers. Like you're your own vibe. And I'm like I like the people that continue to do their thing. Like don't change yours for nobody else. I fuck with that. Like dead ass. So.
We were going to Jay's getting a sleeve tattoo. And we were driving down to the tattoo parlor. Is it a tattoo parlor or a tattoo shop or whatever? And he was like, "Drew, you can't come, man." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Dude, you dress like you got money." And I was just like, "What?" And he was like,
"That's what I was
like, they're gonna try and upcharge my sleeve tattoo."
Yes.
And I was just like, "You know what, man? All right, what?"
Like, yeah, bro. I was like, dude, this is the $40 a gram guy. They're gonna see us coming in, and my tattoo's about to be $300 an hour. It was supposed to be $140 or something, So. Yeah.
Awesome.
Anywho, but yeah, Danielle, let's get into a little bit of your background. Like how did it start? What got you here? What brought you into recovery? And I know that's a big, long scheme of things, but in your own way, what's your story?
Yeah. So let's see. I'll just condense it real quick. I was adopted at birth. My parents they did the best they could, right? That's kind of like the the ping line for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did the best they could. They did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My home was super dark, right? Like I just had a dark upbringing. My mom was very unhappy in the marriage. My dad was super avoidant. And you just like, you hope she never sees this, but you never knew what you're going to get when she got home, right? Yeah. So I just, I identify with the allergy like way beyond. There's no question that I'm an alcoholic, right? So I was using food as a young kid to like comfort, like to fill the void, right? And so a lot of my story, as I'm super open about it, is like I was obese like from a young age. So that's a whole part of my story. I love telling the story because you guys will get it. So this perpetual belief system of like last picked, not good enough started with the infamous Red Rover story. So you guys remember Red Rover,
Dude,
right?
this is wild.
Yeah.
I had the same story. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, this is epic. Okay, so it's field day. 5th grade, maybe 4th grade. I don't remember, but I do vividly remember exactly what was going on, right? And, you know, you have two captains, and they go through and I want you on my team. I want you on my team. Danielle got picked very last.
Oh.
And I remember feeling like, nobody actually wants me. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
For real, yeah.
Just
I'm
like
the
in the
last
movies.
picked chick, right? And so that belief system, like, followed me until I got sober, right? And had some emotional sobriety. And so, like, that was kind of my MO was like, all right, well, I'm not good enough for you guys. So I've got to like, how am I going to be able to be loved and connected or feel connected to people, right? And so I was thinking about this on the way over here. Like, I don't know if I would have been the way that I am without all of that background. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Like, but it definitely like crafted who I am today, right? Like, I was like, what, man, I gotta be fucking cool then, you know? Like, y'all don't want any of this, so like, I gotta be fucking cool to make it, you know? So, anyways, like, I found drugs and alcohol really early. I identify with the allergy with alcohol, but alcohol was not my like first pick. So the obsession, never really experienced it like with alcohol. But let me tell you something. I started using hard drugs at a very early age. And
what's a very early age?
So I got hooked on methamphetamines at 16.
Okay. Yeah.
I used pretty heavily, and then so my using has looked like a lot of things. Xanax was in the picture for a minute, meth, then GHB, then back to, you know, and the consistent substance was always marijuana. Like I was a pothead like at 14. Yeah. But I got wrapped up with the wrong people. This guy who like hired all these like 17-year-old girls. Like in hindsight, looking back, I can see how like screwed up it is, right? But he, you know, I had done cocaine in high school, and he would buy us beer and stuff like after work, and we just thought he was so cool. He drove a Range Rover, and he was like pretty good looking and older. Yeah, he's like 20 years older than us, whatever. He owns like these properties and businesses, and so got caught up in that, right, as a 16-year-old. And I remember going back in the office one day, and he had lines out on the table, and I'm like, oh fuck yeah. He's like, you want a line? And I thought it was cocaine. And I did it, and it was not cocaine, you know? And so it was like off to the races. Like, I never even questioned it, you know? I just was like, oh, I like that, you know? And I chased that feeling and that high for a long time. And so, you know, I identify with the allergy and the obsession very deeply with that stuff, because I remember, like, my life would fall apart. I'd be like, I don't belong here. I would be in environments where people would be like, you don't belong here. And I'm like, yes, I do. You know, I felt like I had to like earn my seat wherever I was at, because I was with a bunch of junkies. Like meth is a whole different vibe. You know what I mean? Like,
it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward, like I end up in treatment. Life's falling apart. At this point, I've used meth. Haven't had a job in 3 years. This is always a kicker. My boyfriend who had a sugar daddy. Yes.
Oh, nice.
That is what was going on in my life.
That's what they call it. It's complicated.
It's complicated, right? Like my intolerable situation I had shoved down so deeply, right? Like I'm not this girl who doesn't have a job, who's being taken care of by some real sketchy ass situation, right? Like becomes my life, right? The alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. So, you know, I'm withering away, and my parents are like, dude, we need to do something. So went to treatment, you know, and I had like painted the town red at this point. So my therapist was like, yeah, you're not going back to Dallas. And I was like, where am I going? Austin. And I was like, cool. So I packed up all my shit, moved here into sober living. And, you know, like I am not the poster child for AA. And I think it's like, it's made me very humble, and it's given me a ton of humility to fall on my ass so many times in recovery. And like, I would watch all the women like that I admire just like effortlessly move through the world. And, you know, simultaneously I'm dealing with this eating disorder that's now cropped its head again, right? Because it's pretty common. And I don't think people talk about it a lot, but like, you remove the alcohol and substances, and I'm not working a program, man, all kinds of other shit's coming up, right? Relationship issues, right? Like sex and love for a lot of people, eating disorders, all of those things, right? And so all of that is happening, and I'm like, I want what you have, but I'm not willing to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And like that went on for a couple of years. I would get some relief, and then I would, you know, like fall back into the same shit. And I finally I was like, you know what? Like, I'm tired of being the girl who wants what you have. Like, I'm going to be the girl who has it, you know? And I threw myself in AA fully, and lo and behold, my life changed, you know? But
what do you know?
Yeah. And along the way, too, like, I found fitness, and I found, like, self-worth and self-love and acceptance of who I am, and loving the journey, you know. But it was pretty miserable for a minute, you know.
Yeah.
So, and now we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. 8 years.
It's like a beautiful place to get
8
to.
years.
Yeah.
8 years. Congratulations.
That's
wild.
That's actually that's a milestone.
It's wild because, and I tell everybody this. I'm not, and nothing against alcohol and you, Drew, or whatever. It's like I'm not surprised when an alcoholic gets 10 years. I'm not, or 8 years or 5 years. I'm not. That doesn't surprise me. It seems like it's easily obtainable. Not that it's easy, but like I see a lot more alcoholics with time. I go into the rooms and I'm like, someone with 30 years is alcoholic. I'm like, that makes more sense to me. That someone who uses hard drugs that gets 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, that blows my mind sometimes. Because a lot of times what happens, and I think maybe the reason is when someone relapses after some time that uses hard drugs, they die.
It kills them.
Alcoholism is more of like the slow thing that kills you over time. So that's anytime I see somebody with time that comes from your story, meth. I say meth. You know what I mean? Methamphetamine users, whatever. Users, like, so it doesn't. That's awesome. You know, so like that's something to like be extremely proud of. You know, and like my story is the same. It's not. My story doesn't tell you that I'm an AA like hero or anybody. It's not, because like I thought I was at one time and I fell, and that humility part that you're talking about, like. Oh, I think I had to, like, I'm the type that has to go through, like, the worst. Like, I have to try everything out my way. I have to figure things. I have to try to prove you wrong. And then I get it? You know, like, just kind of like how I do things. Like, I can't just, like, you can't tell me one thing and I gain the wisdom from you just being honest and be like, okay, they know what they're talking about, and I change
1,000%.
things. I have to, like, go through it. And unfortunately, there's, like, so many ways to go through it and work all this thing with, because, like you said, something else pops up. It's whether it's relationships, it's sex, it's love. All those things can happen, and then I have to navigate that, and then I gotta fucking fail in that area, and be like, oh, okay, now I get that, and then here's another thing that pops up. So like, what do you think? Drugs and alcohol removed, right? And your journey on that. I always talk about the vicious cycle, and we always do. It seems very basic, but at the same time, it's like the most truest thing to me, because like we have that vicious cycle, and that's with drugs and alcohol. But in my opinion, it's the cycle that goes around on the outside of that, using the same words, like with restless, irritable, discontent, all those things.
1,000%.
But it's in life now, you know? What do you think some of the biggest struggles were in terms of getting sober, being sober, and dealing with those things without drugs and alcohol, and how do you think you navigated that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my problem in all of that, and why I kept staying stuck in the cycle, was honesty, dude. I didn't know how to be honest with myself, right? So I'm sure as hell not going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I remember coming to this jumping off place when I finally got honest about my eating disorder and like all the nitty gritty that came with that. Like, for some reason, there was so much more shame around that area than being a drug addict. Like, I almost wore it like a badge. I'm like, yeah, I'm a drug addict. I'm in recovery, right? Like, I don't care. Like, because I was immersed in this community that, like, you know, it became so normalized, right? Like, we're recovering addicts. Like, it's not a big deal. But for some reason, this area specifically, like, kept me really sick. And a lot of that had to do with, like, my like not feeling good enough or worthy, right? It all kind of played into each other, but those are the things I wasn't talking about, right? Because I had this stage character that had to be put together all the time. You know what I mean? That was like, I need you to know that I've got it all together, right? And that shit killed me over and over and over and over again. And so when I could start to be honest with myself and start to be like, nah, dude, like, I don't have it together. I don't have the fucking answers, and I'm willing to let you see me look like a complete mess. Yeah. You know? Then that level of humility would give me, you know, I haven't mentioned God yet, but God, like, God's grace has, like, gotten me, you know, he gives you a little bit of grace, and then there's work to do, right? And that's where a lot of us fail is, like, we get the grace, we start to feel good, and then we're not following it up with the work that it takes to experience the freedom, you know? And I could cry thinking about God's grace because, like, it's so undeserving, and he's given it to me over and over and over and over again. But I think that's it, is, like, taking off the mask of looking put together, right? And allowing women to, like, see me, right? Like, not like just fumbling, flailing around like a fish out of water, right? Like, letting the people pleasing, like, put together shit go, like, you know, and letting them carry me. So when I started to do that and allow people to see me, like, unfiltered, is when I started to recover.
And I think that's so awesome that you say it. And there's a lot of good things that you just said that we could dive into too. It's like, because I think people crave genuineness and authenticity. Like, I think we crave that, and I think we're, like, naturally attracted to what that is. And the hard part is getting to that, like, instead of, like, creating our own genuineness that's not genuine, you know, like, there's a struggle that comes with that, in my opinion. So it's like you're saying, and I'm just going to share from my experience from what you just said. I'm at a point in my life to where, like, do I still struggle with wanting to be seen a certain way at times? Absolutely. I think that's something I'll have to battle. And I just, like, step back at times and just think about how goofy that shit is. And I just laugh at myself now because I'm like, okay, I have these things, and of course, like, I try to, like, pretty certain things up, and, like, if I'm being honest, like, the reason I go to the gym for me is, like, I will tell myself, like, it's this mental health thing, and it is, like, because when I'm away from it, I know I'm not all right, but at the same time, like, I do like the way I look in the mirror sometimes. You know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just being straight,
and attention honest. And all the things.
Yeah, there's cool things that come with it. It just can't run my, like, that can't be what makes up Jay. You know, it's like and so, like, damn, I get that. And it's like, but when you step out in what you're talking about being genuine and, like, knowing, like, meeting yourself for the very, very first time and being true to that, and, like, it's like the most beautiful, like, union I think you could ever describe is when what you're saying is being honest with yourself. And that's, like, we talk about honesty and how important it is, but it's, like, so blown over. It looks like it should be black and white. Is that door white? Yes or no, right? And it's like, okay, but like, I'm talking about, like, internally, when you sit with yourself, like, that person, are you honest with that person? And when I think about that, I think of myself every time as a little boy, and I think of myself as you're telling your Red Rover story, like, that's mine too, but because my life looked so different from 0 to 11 than it did from 11 to 18. I was that little boy who struggled, and I was that little boy chosen last for the reasons that didn't make me, you know, I mean, and I learned, but at the same time, then, you know, it's like, that little boy who didn't have anything was chosen last. That was the truest I ever was to the person I wanted to be in my entire life. And I lost that in gaining the things that I thought I needed, you know? So, like, again, you're reintroducing yourself to that that person, I think that's so beautiful once you grab onto it. It took me a long time. It took, like you're saying,
sure.
your stories,
For sure.
this and that, and then all of a sudden when you meet it, it's like it's the biggest. It's like when I took whenever I took a shot of heroin, that. But again, it was like that, but like exponential, to be like, oh, this is me, and I'm okay with that, and I love that person, and like as long as I'm in tune with that, then whatever else goes around or whoever comes into my world or leaves because of it, fuck them. Like, I mean, for real, you know. So like, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that in addiction makes it so hard to break is, you know, especially in your early years, you know, you have all that kind of childhood trauma, and you have a lot of those, you know, character defects and just self-consciousness that, you know, you grow up with and is ingrained in you.
Yep.
And then you stumble across drugs or alcohol. And for me, in my case, it was like, when I had my first beer, it was, or, you know, my first 10, it was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm a cooler person now.
100%.
And it was like all that self-consciousness is gone.
Yep.
And so that stuck with me, I mean, literally for my entire life. And until I got sober, and you know, there's, you know, the physical addiction part that, you know, you remove that, you know, in detox. But even when you come out of that, you're just like, all right, so you're telling me that now I have to take away this special formula that, you know, fixed all my problems that I thought, or I have in my head, that was like the answer to everything that I needed. And how am I supposed to do that?
Yep.
And, you know, that's in my opinion, the hardest part about fighting addiction is because those underlying feelings, that self-consciousness, is always going to kind of be there unless you know, buy into that, you know, that program, or in your case, you know, through God's grace and through, you know, being completely honest and, you know, fighting through that fear. So, I mean, yeah, it's an incredible thing to see people do. And, you know, in my opinion, I think that really is the thing that keeps that. It's that mental obsession that keeps people relapsing and coming back to that drug, because that's the answer to that void that they've had in their life for so many years.
Well, and like all we all want is deep connection, right? Authentic connection.
That's true.
And I have all these old ideas that are driving my behavior, right? Like, I've got to be like this for you to like me. I've got to show up like this to be cool so you'll like me. I've got to look this way so you'll like me, right? And all of these things, like, they drive me the opposite direction. And all of a sudden, I'm like this person who I'm not actually, and not connecting with anybody, you know, on a deep level. And I remember, like, this was the moment that, like, turned everything for me. Is this girl, I'm actually driving to San Antonio to go see her. She's one of my best friends now. When I first, like, came into the rooms, she was somebody I admired. She had like 4 or 5 years of sobriety, and like I felt very, like, connected to her, and I wanted to know her, and I wanted to be close to her. And of course, at that time, I don't know how to, like, ask for that, right? So I, like, we would talk about getting together, and I actually ended up seeing her. I went to church when I first got sober. That's, like, where I found, like, God, you know. And so I saw her at the church I was going to, and I'm like, oh my God, she goes to church too, and like all these things, right? And she never really got close to me. And years later, I saw her at a bonfire, like a sober bonfire. And I was like, Nicole, you know, and at that moment our friendship started. But I remember her saying, like, I used to watch you, and I just thought you were too good for me. Like, and at that time in my life, y'all, it was the most, like, the darkest, the most suicidal, the most I hated myself. And I was putting on this aura that I was, like, put together and too good for this person.
Oof.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, what that told me was, like, people don't want to be connected to me because they're not seeing the real me. They don't relate to people being put together, you know? Like, and now I get that, like, because I'm met with people that are mirrors of me all the time, right? But I'm just further along in the journey, and I'm like, wow, this is painful to watch. You know, this is painful to watch, this level of inauthenticity and people pleasing and all these things, but they're all mirrors for me for at one, you know, phase of my journey. But that was like an eye-opening thing for me, was like, wow, I really can put on a show for people. And it gets me the opposite of what I actually want, which is connection.
Yeah.
So
the connection is where it's at.
Yeah.
And I'll preach that too. It's like we want connection, and the answer to that is people and more people. you know?
Yeah.
Trying to, and like, I don't even, and what you're speaking on, it's not even like our community type thing. Addiction, it's an everybody problem.
Yeah.
Like we're in a world of inauthentic.
Oh my God.
And and so like when you feel it's like so refreshing to have that, and then and I think that's why we want more and more of it, because maybe we don't even really know what it feels like to have that for a substantial amount of time, and that it's possible that you can have that, and it's just freedom and more freedom, wrapped all in that, and like I said, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I balance it all the time, and I sometimes I have to look at myself and reground, and I too found like God's grace is the biggest thing in my life, period. Like without God's grace, I don't know love at that level. And I had to be but my story with God and how that's found is he humbled me in a way to where it was like I either trusted him or the other route was going to be like a total devastation.
Yeah.
And I found what true love meant in that way. And like, I don't know if like I have ever allowed someone to truly love me either, and I found that through something that I can't feel or touch and that's a beautiful thing too. And I do go to church every Sunday, and I don't mean to, it's just like, I haven't missed a Sunday. And I don't know why. I think it's because, and I love music, that too. And I know you love music. And so I feel very connected through music. I feel the presence of this God thing that I like to call through that. And I know I'm not fooled in any way in my life to know that like that's what saved me. Yeah. Like that's what finally gave me like true vision. And like I wish I knew a way to pass that on more and more to people, but you can't, because it's a touchy subject. And it's like, I don't need you to know my God at all. I need you to know some God. I just need you to know that it's not you, like to a point, can we open for this conversation? Yeah. And I just like, I remember that so many times like trying to figure that out at a younger age. And then like the truth is like in my life, the older I get, I don't have to like, I'm not packing on adjectives to describe me or to try to figure things out. Like it was an unpacking process, and then followed by like this God thing gonna like build me up into what I truly think I am, or not think I am, or what I am. And that's to like, I think it's to lead life in kindness, and it's to show compassion, and it's to like find the grace that exists in everybody's story, and to completely try to lead with that, So yeah, so let me know this. Sorry, I went on a little rant. Sorry. So let's talk about this. We haven't asked anybody this question, but we've been talking about it a little bit, because let's talk about relationships. Yeah. Are you down for that? Okay. Totally. What's been your experience in sobriety in relationship? The failed ones, the ones that work for a while, that don't, like when do you know, like how have you navigated that situation in 8 years? Like what do you think,
Yeah. That's a great question. And only in my last few years have I even had an actual long-term relationships in recovery. So did a lot of dating, but you guys, I didn't have any self-worth for the first few years in dating. So that looked very much like, and I'm, fearful, avoidant attachment style. So it's like, first it was, I'm not dating for a year, and then the year turned into 2 years, and then the 2 years turned into 3 years, and I'm like, holy shit. My sponsor's like, dude, go date. You gotta do it.
You put in your time. You're
right. The whole time, I want to date. I want to experience connection on that level, but I'm so deeply afraid, right? And part of that is the fear of rejection, right? Like all of us have this deep fear of rejection on some level, right? And I remember the moment, and I don't even know, this was just a total divine thing. My sponsor's like, why don't you take the word rejection out of your vocabulary, right? And it's more of a mismatch, right? If something doesn't work out, it's not because they're rejecting who you are as a human. It's just not a fit. And I was like, oh, I can get down with that,
Yeah.
And so, and also over the years, I've realized that, because I've been ghosted so many times, I've ghosted people, it's all fear of being direct, right? And being like, hey, I just don't see this going in a romantic direction, which is the line that I've adopted, right? And so I have experienced that rejection, right? And made it through, whatever, I'm fine.
Yeah, you're still here. Yeah.
And those experiences I'm so grateful for, because while they maybe knocked me on my ass for a second, when you can come back to the truth of man, this isn't really about me. You know what I mean? I believe that God has someone for me, so I'm going to keep trucking, right? And do the work that I got to do around it to move forward. But So that was the first few years of like going on dates and being like, or maybe even like being into somebody, but being afraid of that. And so it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I'm in a relationship now. He's got 12 years sober. He's a great guy.
Yeah, good dude.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And like, before that, I was in a long-term relationship, and, you know, like, I'm so grateful for that relationship today because, and I didn't see it this way, you know, in the midst of it all, but like, we taught each other a lot, you know, and, I learned so much about, how terrible I can be at communication, how, you know, like how much my attachment system, and that's, you know, that's a lot of what I've learned is like my attachment system really prevents me from being able to be the woman I want to be a lot of the times, right? And driven by fear and all of these things. But, you know, I was with him for about 1.5 years. We moved in together, and like pretty quickly it was like, you know, this isn't working out. And, you know, like I got to walk away from that relationship with integrity. Like it was sad. It was really hard. And then I moved into one of the most transformative years of my entire life because of that relationship. And that was 2 years ago, that year began, right? And, you know, I have him to thank for that in such a big way. You know, he has no idea. I mean, we don't talk anymore. But, you know, if he knew the amount of appreciation and gratitude I have for, like, you know, getting to learn from him. And I hate that. Like, right, some people do come into your life to be the teachers. Yeah. You know, sure. And like, I say hate that. I don't hate that. Like, it's learning how to accept that and appreciate it for what it is, right? But we don't go into relationships thinking like, he's going to be my teacher. You know what I mean? Like, I learn the most from this guy.
I'm going to squeeze this lemon for what I can.
Yeah. We want it to work, right? Yeah. We want it to work. And like, you know, I got to look at a lot of things once that relationship was over, and look at like how deeply like I am the problem over and over and over again, you know? And then navigating like dating someone in recovery and your worlds being so enmeshed, like, let me tell you something, that was probably the most uncomfortable part, you know,
and that's a big topic, you know, I mean, you know, dating somebody in recovery versus dating somebody not, you know, I mean, it's a big difference. And, you know, we've talked about it a lot on this show, you know, on whether or not those relationships are good ideas, especially early on in recovery. Because, I mean, you're both going through so much of your own shit at the time. And it's so important.
If it's early.
If it's early.
And that's our experience right now, right? It's like, it's, because we're not 8 years into it. So like, so it's cool to hear the perspective.
Exactly. But even not when you're early, you both are working different programs. And, you know, it's got to be hard. I mean, I have no experience in this. So, I mean, I'm kind of asking your opinion. It's like, you guys have to keep both of your programs separate from each other. And it's hard to, like, while you're in a relationship, if you see one person going astray, being like, you know, hey, you need to work your program better. Or, you know, oh, hey, you know, you should, you know, take some inventory on that. You know, like, how do you kind of navigate those channels without it, like, interfering romantically?
Good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so, like, nothing will piss me off more in a relationship than being like, you need to talk to your sponsor. Like, I need to write some.
I knew it.
You don't even have language like that in a relationship.
You can.
And like, I didn't with my last relationship either. But it's hard because, you know, like, in that relationship, I was not the greatest version of myself, and I did not have AA as my anchor. You know what I mean? So my relationship today is a very different experience, right? Like, I would be lying if I said I didn't experience untreated alcoholism a lot in my last relationship, which was the problem, right? Like, and I'm not going to speak about him. That was his experience. But really just allowing it to be what it is like the hardest thing. It's just like sponsoring people, right? Like when your sponsee's walking into the fire and you're like, oh God. Here we go. And you have to just let it happen, right? It's harder in a relationship, right? Because there's more at risk, right?
For sure.
There's more at risk. And what I know today is like, could my relationship have been my last relationship been a lot different had I been, you know, doing what I needed to do to be emotionally sober? 100%, right? I don't, you know.
Yeah, sure.
But, and so that was a huge lesson going into this one, was like, oh God, like if I have any chance at a successful relationship, it's going to be fucking doing my own work, right? And not worrying about what they're doing. I can't, right?
Yeah.
All I can do is do my own work. And if it works out with this person, great. And if it doesn't, like, I know that I have shown up in the best way possible, right? But yeah, I mean, God, relationships in America, it's hard, right? Like I had to give up my home group for a minute, that I was at for 7 years.
Jesus.
And just really take care of myself, you know? And like, I had a lot of bitterness in that too, because I'm like, this is mine. You weren't here before. You know? But that's all ego, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
my home group is an amazing place, and like everybody should get an opportunity to be immersed in that. And I don't get to call the shots. And so I take care of myself, you know, step away. But it's been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I hope that
Awesome.
answers the question.
No, it does. Absolutely.
And you know, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, especially at 8 years of recovery, you know, on last time's show, we were talking about how, you know, the first year is like its own experience, and the second year is an even crazier experience, because it's like, you know, the first year you kind of get to use that, oh, I'm in sobriety card to your benefit a little bit. Like, oh, I'm, you know, in my first year, I need to give myself a little extra grace. I need to, you know, really need to take care of me. And then the second year hits, and it's just like, fuck, okay, like, I mean, I'm just a person now. Like, I need to get my shit together and start doing everything like a normal person now. So, I mean, like, what does your program look like now? Like, what keeps you sober now in 8 years? You know, I mean, obviously, you know, your program looks probably very different than it did year 2 or year 3. So, I mean, what do you do these days that, you know, keeps you on the right path and, you know, keeps you spiritually fit?
Oh, I love this question, because let me tell you something. Charlie Parker, like he was such a great mentor, and he said, you know, you hear people say like, he works a good program. There is no working a good program. There is the program, and then there is not working a program.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And
I like that.
So there have been so many years where it was like nightlies were objectionable, like, or not objectionable, but were, what's the word I'm looking for? Optional, right?
Yeah.
Like
Objectionable is still the right word.
Yeah,
Whether people might find it objectionable.
right. All of these different things were optional to me, and like today, they're not optional. Like they're just not. And so that resistance and stepping into that like truth, like, am I connected to step 1? Am I connected to step 2? Because I think a lot of our problem, I'll speak for myself, is like along the way it's become a step 2 problem, where do I believe God's going to take me past where I am here and now, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when you fall on your ass enough and you feel enough misery, like the parts of the program they're not an option anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And so that is how I have become the woman that people look at and they're like, man, how? Right? Like, I think probably some people watch me and they're like, she's got it together. She's always had it together. Oh, no, ma'am. You know what I mean? Like, I have really done some shit in sobriety that is, I'm embarrassed about, not embarrassed anymore, that I was embarrassed about, that I was like, I can't believe you're showing up this way in recovery, right? Like 10 times over. But yeah, I mean, like, it's not for people who want it or need it. It's for people who do it, right?
Yeah.
And do the program as it's lined out on the wall. So
Yeah.
that's
That's kind of how my thing is too. It's like I don't know, the programs, to me, I've had to, like, you know, of course, like my mind works in the way to where I have to, like I say, I'll like navigate through it all and break it down in this like educational variety type of things to where I need to like dissect it. I mean, I've done it all. Like I've been to the point to where like I know the book, I can read the book, I can recite the book, I can tell you what pages they come from, you know, I can, and then like, but then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, okay, let's break this down a little bit more. Of course, my mind goes there. I'm like, so this is truly about principle. Like I am firmly I stand tall on that. It's like, and what has blown my mind lately is I'll sit down with people and like in treatment centers, for example, I'll sit down with people and I'm like, okay, you know, they've been taught some of these steps. I'm like, do you know any of the principles? And they're like, what are those? You know, and it blows my mind.
What principles?
Because I'm like, wait, hold on. Like the point of this to me was to connect me to honesty. So I need to be an honest person. Like the second step you're talking about is what? Hope. Like, you know, am I hopeful that God can do this? And so, like, I need to be aligned with the principles as much as possible. And I was like, for whatever reason that makes sense to me, I don't know. And I'm like, I mean, I'm not the smartest person in the world. But, like, being an honest person in myself makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Like understanding like that I can gain hope through other people makes sense to me, or God can give me hope in other people. Faith looks a lot different. Like it's trust and it's surrender and all those things. You know, like because I don't exhibit any of that shit in my daily life without having to, like, without this program. Like the program got me to that. And so it's my foundation, you know? And like today I've noticed cause I'm the type that have like kept notes and shit from my past. And it's interesting to look back at, like, even you have diaries or entries or like even like, you know, Google's badass cause it keeps up your emails. Some of the shit that used to go through my mind, like are like streams of conscious that I have going on, just a different place I was in now. And like, you know, and I look today and I'm like, dang, you know, like at the end of my day, like, you know, if you ask me what I want to be, is I want to be a good person, you know, simple. It's very simple in the complication of all this shit, you know, and like, I want to do the right thing, you know, and I've noticed that like doing the right thing sometimes is hard as shit, you know, like it's hard, but I will stand on it. I will get kicked out of whatever situation I'm in. I will argue against the best of them. You know what I mean? Because I know it's like here's where I'm getting with this question. The book says this, it's like, and I throw that back because people understand it. It's like we reach a point of like God consciousness, right? I think to me, that's saying that little voice in my head that's like always trying to ruin my day, my plans. It becomes something of like positivity. It becomes something of like there is right and there is wrong. And it's like something of like steady flow of like just like good, you know, are in the stream, middle of the stream, you know. Do you remember whenever that entered your life? Do you remember the God conscious piece where it's like, okay, like I have, you know, it's like the mental obsession like you were talking about, it's removed, right? And I think when that's removed, the power of choice does return. Like, and that says, I have the choice now. If it's laying right there, I can choose to fuck with it or not. Do you remember that choice? Was there ever a moment in your time of like, you know, like, okay, there you are, or like something returning, or like or maybe pushing away, or telling that thing it's like, no, like you're not owning me anymore. Does that make sense at all? I'm trying to like rephrase it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, so my recovery in the first few years, and I think a lot of our experiences like that is like that stream of consciousness is so fragmented, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and it's all aligned with like, oh, I start to feel good, I get life's feeling good and things are easy, and then I let up, right? And then that stream of consciousness becomes more fragmented, right? The ego has more room to sneak its way in, and you know, the voice becomes louder, the voice I don't want to hear becomes louder, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think like I wish there was a better answer than when you work the program like it's outlined, that stream of consciousness becomes like just the norm, right? Like, and the ego, when the ego comes in, it's so clear what's going on, right? Because I'm so awake to it, and there's not judgment around it. I'm like, oh, there's that motherfucker again, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't have judgment. I'm like, and so like, I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah,
it's
it
like,
does.
So many of us are asleep dreaming we're awake. You know what I mean? And thinking but when I start to do the disciplines, right, which is our biggest problem, is we're such undisciplined people. But when I start to make the disciplines a thing that I just do, it becomes that eventually. I'll tell you that. And so if anybody's listening, or any of you guys are sitting here and you're like, oh man, like I could be doing better. Yeah, we all can, right? But there becomes a point where you're just like, it just becomes a part of what you do, right? And not to say you're not going to let up again or whatever, but because I'm more awake than I'm not, that the discomfort becomes unbearable, right? Yeah. The idea of like telling a lie, like, dude, I can't sit in that shit today. Like, the minute I'm dishonest, I'm like, you know, like, it's like word vomit, you know, but it used to not be that way. Like, my ability to sit in misery was like, I could do it a lot longer, you know? And I think the more awake you become and the more this just becomes a working part of the mind, like, that's when the shift happens. Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself sitting by yourself and just like, I don't know, does pride ever enter, you know what I mean? I mean, like, do you ever and I know that sounds crazy, but like to really truly sit there and just like that person, that woman, that girl, that brokenness, like it's like you explaining to me here right now, you sound like a person that's been through a lot, but has also like experienced, like I'm like almost getting emotional thinking about it, and like just because of like the place that you've been taken from, removed to, and even the in-betweens of it to the place that like you're at now. It's such a it's inspiring and it's beautiful because it's like, man, number one, like a lot of people don't get there. And number two, it's like you made it. And like, but do you ever give yourself, I know there's a lot of credit to give to God, but are you ever just like, man, like this person, this woman, like there is so much like pride, like right here, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the emotion behind it all because like, I think I want to first say, like, you know, I went and did a 12-step call the other morning, and the person's mom had never really been immersed in people in recovery, right? Her daughter had just gone through treatment. She relapsed again. And, you know, we all show up at her house, and her mom said, listen, I got to say, like, I've never met a group of people that are more incredible than you guys. Like, man, sober people just blow my mind, you know? And, like, I've heard that so many times from I hate the word normie, but normie, right? For lack of a better word. That's one part of it where it's like, we really are like some amazing human beings, right? So I just want to say that, like, I don't think that we as a collective really understand the depth and the weight that we carry in the world outside of our own recovery world. Like, being a principled person, like people see that, and it's not common. It's not common because people in the regular world can walk around in life asleep and not die over it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, and to answer your question about that, like, dude, when I started to like show up authentically, like social media has been a great platform, and like I didn't realize how many people it touched until I, you know, because I've posted pictures that like I in the beginning of my sobriety would never have posted, right? Where I'm like very unhappy, unhealthy, like overweight, like, and you know, that stuff for me doesn't hit me the same way because I am so fucking proud of who I am today. Like, there have been so many moments like in meditation or just life in general, I'm driving and I like cannot believe the woman that I am today. Like, I cannot believe it. And it's not all because of me, but there was a lot of work I did to get to that point too, right? God is obviously like at the anchor. He's the anchor, right? But like, man, I've overcome a lot of things, you know, and I've been really brave, and I've been really, you know, I've been really kicked down too. But like, yeah, like I tear up sometimes, and I'm just like, dude, you're incredible.
Yeah. I think it's like that time where you meet. It's like when you hear that voice for the first time and it says everything's okay, and like you finally believe that and you know it. Like, that's a fucking feeling,
dude.
It's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Because you're not used to it.
There's nothing like it. And it's because it's like, it's real, and it's the truth.
Yeah.
And for the first time, there's nothing attached to that, you know, and nothing attached to earn it, to gain it, to it's given, it's free. And it's like, it's the truth. And it's like, wow. Okay. It's like it feels like being rescued, you know, it feels like it feels like you're being rescued. And it's like, I don't know. It's just like from a hopeless place with no other route, with no other alternative. It ends badly, and the most terrible like devastation to like being in the arms of something comfortable.
You know, in a weird way, it's like the first time, at least for me, it was like the first time ever feeling safe in you know, ever. It's just like, you know, when I was in addiction and, you know, all the lies, all of the, you know, whatever manipulation, you know, it's just like when you finally let all that go and you're finally comfortable in your own skin, it's just like you don't have all those lies hanging over your head anymore. And it's like you let down like this bundle of bricks all of a sudden, and it's just like, shit, like I can start living now.
Yeah.
You know, and that really is, I mean, you know, talk about relief, but I mean, that's such a like liberating feeling. You know, it's just like one of those things that you didn't even know existed until you finally find it. And, you know, and that's one of the things that, you know, for everyone who's listening, that I want everyone to hear is that is available. It's out there. You know, it's one of those things you have to work for it. And I mean, the road, we all know the road isn't easy. Yeah. But I mean, fuck, when you get there, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that this subject's talked about a lot is like, dude, the first few years are a lot of hanging on.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people relapse and give in, because they think like this is what it's going to be like, dude. But it's a lot of like holding on to hope even when you don't have it, or feeling like, God damn, it's got to get better than this. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know what it was that gave me, well, God, you know, but like why I stuck it out. Like, I think like I just had a lot of good mentors in my life, and I believed deep down in there, I was like, I know it's got to get better. Like, I know it's got to get better. And like, maybe it feels really shitty right now, and maybe it's felt really shitty for a minute, but like, I know that I know I deserve this, and I know it's going to happen one day, you know?
Yeah.
But so many people just think like you're going to come into this program, work it, and like, you know, that it's going to look like joy and happiness and peace quickly. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Like, it doesn't, because like you said earlier, like, you're telling me you're taking away the one thing that has given me peace, happiness, confidence, whatever. You're taking that solution from me, right? So like, yeah, like there's gonna be a lot of layers that I have to look at and things I have to experience without a crutch.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And it hurts like hell, dude.
Yeah.
It hurts like hell, man. Like, it just does.
It's all we've ever known for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's one of the things, and, you know, I think that sobriety is different for everybody, especially early on. You know, a lot of people talk about riding that pink cloud, but I mean, I never had that. You know, for me, it was just like, shit, I'm sober. What do I do now? And it just gradually got better and better and better and better. But, you know, it takes a long time. Sobriety is not pretty in the beginning. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where it's scary as shit.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's just like, fuck, like, you know, I mean, I can't be the person that I want to be without my rocket fuel.
Yeah.
And, you know, but gradually you start realizing that you can. And I mean, it's just one of those things where I feel like, especially, you know, addicts and alcoholics, like our confidence has been shaken more than once, you know, and it's just like, I don't really know if I have it in me to do this. Like, I can't walk into, like, I can't go on this blind date without having a few cocktails, or, you know, I can't go into this job interview without slamming vodka. Like, you know, I mean, it's all those things that our brain is just so hardwired to believe. I mean, no doubt it takes years for that to rewire itself, and for you to kind of like relearn how to live again. You know, so I mean, it's a journey. It really is.
Well, and that's where our like brothers and sisters in recovery play such a huge role, right? Because like, dude, the women that I have in my life, like sometimes I look at my life and I'm like, how did I get so lucky? Like I have, and not only do I have like a core group of, I have so many that I consider like family, like who have absolutely accepted me at my worst and have loved me all the same, you know, and like have given me the ability to be brave when I didn't want to be brave, because I knew I had them and they were going to walk, you know, hand in hand with me through whatever was coming up, you know, like whether that's a new job, a new relationship, rejection, you know, you name it. Like those are the hands of God, you know. It's undeniable that God puts these people in your life, right? That like that help walk you to the confidence, that help walk you to the bravery, that help walk you to self-acceptance and self-love, right? Like we don't do that on our own.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if I didn't have, you know, friends in sobriety, or, you know, the network of, you know, guys that are around me that I have now, I mean, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that I would have made it, for sure. Like, no way. So, I mean, yeah, I think
the support and and it's all important. It's the people, man. Yep. I will always come back to, like, it's the people. All right, before we get out of here, so you work in treatment?
I do.
You've been working there for a minute.
8 years.
Yo, with Mr. Jesse McGraw.
Yeah.
Jesse's one of the persons I've looked up to for a long time. You know, he just he told me some straight truth a lot, and when I needed to hear it in the most firm way. That was before Grace was introduced in my life, but I needed the accountability first, and then I found. But it's not like he was crazy hard. It was just like he told me the truth, and I needed to hear that. You know, so like, you like it where you're working? You like working in treatment?
I do. I mean, like, I did not want to work in treatment when I got sober. I heard so many horror stories, and I was, so at the time, I'll make this really brief. Like, I was riding the bus I didn't have a car for 2 years in recovery. I was riding the bus to work, my serving job, and to school.
Yeah.
And beautiful God story how I got my car. But so like I somebody gifted me a car, and she didn't know me from Adam, and she was like, I feel like God put this on my heart to give this to you. I see what you're doing, and like picked me up, took me, put it in my name, and was like just keep doing what you're doing.
Come on, God,
like,
let's go. That's
great. You know, but that opened my world, right? Because at the time, like, there was no way I could go drive to Driftwood, right?
Yeah.
And so it opened my world, and my friend was like, dude, they're opening this treatment center. It's beautiful. Like, you got to check it out. I was like, no. And then a couple weeks later, he's like, dude, you come on. I was like, you know what? All right, I'll interview. What's the big
harm could it do? Yeah.
And I went and I met the owner, and he was like, we'd love to have you. Like, and I said, okay. And I was a care coordinator, and I moved my way up, and I work in admissions now, and they're my family, dude.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
They've been the grunt of my sobriety has been like to hold a job for 7 years.
What? Yeah, that's mind-boggling, right?
Unheard of. Right? So, yeah, like I do love it, and it's been more than a treatment job. It's been like an extended family.
I'm glad you're in it. I think it's like any way that we can like immerse ourselves to try to help in any way is a great thing. And then last question, I guess what would you say to people out there who there's what we're finding through messages that we receive. And we try to keep the communication like discreet as possible, because it's like a lot of not understanding still, you know, that people who are out there needing to get help don't know how to ask for help or have the conversation. Is there anything in advice that you would give to those people out there that are struggling, that are trying to figure a way out, trying to figure out what the next step might be, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, God puts people in our life at the right time. So, like, if you're struggling and don't know what to do next, just, you know, ask someone for help and ask someone for direction. Like, I feel like recovery is such a tangible thing at this point. You know, thank you, Bill and Bob, and everybody that made it what it is, right? But like, I think the biggest thing to know is like, if you're struggling and you're afraid to lose the thing that gave you all the things we talked about before, like, and you're afraid of losing that, like, you don't have to commit to that. Like, ask someone for help and just commit to that day and let the rest unfold as it should. But
don't be afraid to ask for help, people.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Yeah.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We really appreciate it.
Dude, yeah, it's been fun hanging out with you.
No, love your story, and I think everything that you said is really gonna reach out to a lot of people, especially those who are in recovery and maybe struggling in recovery.
Yeah.
You know, because God knows
even
there's
those who aren't, because like the whole time she's talking, it's like it sounds like a woman who has been through it and gets and is now in like real life and stuff, and the alcohol and drugs are removed, and this is what like everyday type stuff that we go through, and like the climb even out of that, it's just such a beautiful story for anybody. You know.
Thank you.
It is possible, guys.
It is. It's possible.
Well, guys, thank you all for listening. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on our Instagram page at Something Like Sober. Please feel free to listen to our podcast in the future on Spotify and YouTube. So, Jay, thanks for being here, bud. Danielle, thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Talk to y'all later.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.